Now, speaking of electric technology, Mark, it's hilarious in the UK where EV sales apparently have plummeted, and they're blaming Rowan Atkinson. They're blaming Mr. Bean because he wrote a piece critical of his experiences with an electric vehicle.
An honest piece from a guy who's famous for playing a guy who can't think for a living. It's absolutely absurd. You know, Rowan Atkinson is actually a really clever guy. He's got a degree in engineering. He knows his stuff. He's got an awesome car collection, and he got duped by the electric car industry. That's all he did. He's just said, hey, I got duped. Maybe you will too. Just be cautious. I think he should lean into it. I think we should see Mr. Bean, Mr. Bean Goes Electric as a new film or something, and he just gets in the car. It'll be a comedy of errors, but none of it's his fault. None of it's a typical Mr. Bean problem. The car just runs out of power. It catches on fire. Who knows what's going to happen?
Well, I mean, it's a fair point. I mean, why wouldn't the politicians of Lords and the Commons blame their failures over electric vehicles on this man? Oh, Tim, he clearly knows what he's talking about.
I mean, as Mark mentioned, this is basically the plot of every Mr. Bean sketch. That all these clever people have these great plans and this great organisation. In this case, we have massive global government and industry work and efforts all to drive towards one thing. And it gets derailed by one guy who plays an idiot on TV. It's so fantastic. It's adorable.
No, nothing wrong with the technology. It's all about Mr. Bean. Yeah. Now, I'm going to go to a frightening crash now into the real world now. Not the Mr. Bean character, but this bloke you're about to say is the real President of the United States, the actual leader of the free world, and he seems to forget the name of Hamas.
There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas, but it seems to be a little over the top. We're not sure where it is.
Oh, dear, Mark. He couldn't even think of, the bad guys.
I'm surprised you even played this on telly, mate. The time expenditure to get that one segment out, I nearly fell asleep here. The only solace I have is the fact that he's got his finger on, he's got the nuclear codes, but I don't know if he'd be able to operate the tech. Thank goodness. Like, you'd open it up, you're like, come on, man. Thank God he doesn't know how to operate the technology, because we'd all be up in smoke.
Well, I'm going to show, before I get your thoughts, Tim, I'm going to show you another clip from the day before. This is the president, and before you look at this, I think I should remind viewers that Francois Mitterrand was president of France, but he left office in the 1990s and actually died in 1996. But here's Joe Biden this week.
Right after I was elected, I went to what they call a G7 meeting, all the NATO leaders. And I sat down and I said, America's back. And Mitterrand from France looked at me and said, how long are you back for?
Tim, who knew they had Ouija boards at NATO?
Yeah, Mitterrand from Germany, from France, from beyond the grave. He just kept reaching. But the response from Ghost Mitterrand sounded kind of like what you'd expect from a guy who's been dead for nearly 30 years. So, good for that. It was fantastic.
Oh, it's very funny, yet very, very frightening at the same time. Thanks so much for joining us, Tim and Mark. I appreciate it. Catch you next week.